They stood in front of my chair like security guards at a nightclub, blocking entry to someone they deemed unworthy.
I opened
my own sons. The two boys I carried in my womb, nursed through fevers held during thunderstorms, and loved with every fiber of my being for over 4 decades. "You're not mentioned in the will," Randall said flatly, his arms folded across his chest like a barrier. His voice carried that smooth, practiced tone he used when closing real estate deals. Cold, calculated, final. Trevor shifted his weight beside him, adding with a half smile that made my stomach turn, "It's just for immediate family, Mom." Immediate family. I stood at the entrance of the law office, holding a navy blue folder against my chest. My hands weren't shaking. I made sure of that. I had spent 67 years learning how to steady myself when the world tried to knock me down. This moment would be no different. The room was elegant in that old money way. Heavy curtains the color of dried blood framed tall windows. A polished oak table dominated the center, surrounded by leather chairs that probably cost more than my first car. The air smelled of furniture polish and old paper, the kind of smell that whispered of inheritances and family secrets. I looked at Randall, really looked at him. 45 years old, salt and pepper hair styled perfectly, wearing a suit that cost more than some people's monthly rent. When did he become this person? When did my baby boy, the one who used to bring me dandelions from the backyard and call them the most beautiful flowers in the world, transform into this man who could look at his mother and see only an obstacle and Trevor? 42, still carrying that boyish look that had gotten him out of trouble his whole life. He had the decency to avoid my eyes, at least. Some small part of him still remembered, I think, still felt something, but not enough, not nearly enough. "I received a letter," I said quietly, keeping my voice level, "from Winslow and Chambers. It had this address and this date." Randall scoffed, actually scoffed at me like I was a senile old woman who had wandered into the wrong building. "They must have made a mistake. We're handling the estate now. Aunt Marlene appointed us last fall." "She didn't have children," Trevor added, as if I needed reminding, as if I hadn't spent the last 3 years of my life caring for my sister, while these two couldn't be bothered to visit more than twice. "I'm her sister," I said. The words hung in the air between us. Sister. Not a distant relative, not a family friend. Her sister. Her Irish twin born 11 months apart. The person who held her hand when our parents died. The woman who bathed her when she forgot how. Who read her poetry when she couldn't remember her own name. Who sat with her body for 2 hours after she passed, not wanting her to be alone, not even in death. Randall's expression didn't change. "Look, Mom, we can explain everything later, but right now you're not on this version of the will. So please don't make a scene." Don't make a scene. How many times had I heard those words throughout my life? When your father said something cruel at dinner parties, don't make a scene. When the boys misbehaved in public, handle it quietly, don't make a scene. When Derek died, and I wanted to scream at the unfairness of it all, I swallowed it down because good women don't make scenes. I had spent my entire life not making scenes, being pleasant, being agreeable, being the woman who gave and gave and gave until there was nothing left and then somehow found more to give. Not today. I took a step forward. Neither of them moved to stop me, not physically. They probably assumed I would turn around, go home, cry into my tea and accept whatever scraps they decided to throw my way. "I'm not here to make a scene," I said, my voice steady as granite. "I'm here because Marlene wanted me to be." The secretary behind the desk cleared her throat. Her nameplate read, K. Mendez. She was young, maybe 30, with nervous eyes that darted between my sons and me, like she was watching a tennis match she hadn't signed up to referee. "Ma'am, you're not on the list," she said apologetically. I didn't respond to her. Instead, I reached into my Navy folder and pulled out a document, walked right past my sons, who parted slightly in surprise, and handed the paper to Ms. Mendez. "Please give this to Mr. Harold," I said. "I believe it supersedes any amendments made last fall." She blinked at me, then at the document, then back at me. Something in my expression must have convinced her, because she stood and walked toward the door at the end of the room without another word. Randall started to speak, but Trevor grabbed his arm. "Let's just wait," he muttered. Smart boy. At least one of them had some sense left. I walked to the chair they had been blocking and sat down. Neither of them tried to stop me. The leather was cool against my back, the chair surprisingly comfortable. I placed the folder on my lap, no longer clutching it like a shield. Now it rested there like a promise. The room fell silent. A grandfather clock in the corner ticked away the seconds. Somewhere outside, a car horn honked. Life continued oblivious to the drama unfolding in this stuffy law office. I looked across the table and caught the eye of a cousin I hadn't seen in 20 years. Margaret's boy, all grown up now, with gray at his temples. He gave me a small nod, barely perceptible. I returned it. At least someone in this room remembered what family meant. The door at the end of the room opened. Mr. Harold stepped through, and the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. He was exactly as I remembered him. Tall, thin, with a gray beard that always seemed to have a hint of dust in it, like he spent his days surrounded by old books and older secrets. His eyes were sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses, missing nothing. In his hands he held the document I had given Ms. Mendez. "Mrs. Delacroix," he said, his voice carrying across the room, "may I speak with you privately for a moment?" Randall bristled immediately. "We were told this was a closed session. Whatever you need to discuss should be discussed with everyone present." Mr. Harold didn't even look at him. His eyes remained fixed on me, and in them I saw something that made my heart skip. Recognition. Respect. "This concerns joint filings from 2008, he said. "If you'll follow me." I rose from my chair, my legs steady despite the weight pressing against my chest. 40 years of teaching elementary school had given me plenty of practice at appearing calm when everything inside me was chaos. As I walked past Randall, I felt his eyes boring into my back. Let him stare. Let him wonder. Let him feel for once what it was like to be on the outside looking in. Mr. Harold's private office smelled of cedar and something else, something older, wisdom maybe, or secrets. There were no chairs, just a high counter covered in papers and a single lamp that cast everything in amber light. He laid the document flat on the counter and studied it for a long moment before speaking. "This is unexpected," he finally said. "Is it?" He looked up at me, and I saw the ghost of a smile at the corner of his mouth. "You and Marlene executed a mutual will in 2008, witnessed, notarized, and filed in the county record. It predates the revision your son submitted by several years." "She insisted on it," I said. "Marlene never trusted anyone but me, not with the important things." "Legally, Mr. Harold continued, "this document overrides any later changes unless it was revoked in your presence with your written consent." He paused. "Was it?" "No." One word, one syllable. And with it, 17 years of planning came to fruition. Mr. Harold nodded once slowly. "Then you are the sole beneficiary. The entire estate. The house, the land, the accounts. Everything listed in the 2008 will belongs to you." I had known this, of course. I had known it since the day Marlene and I sat in this very office, younger versions of ourselves, signing documents that would bind our fates together. We had laughed about it afterward, drinking wine in her kitchen, joking about how we were probably being paranoid. We weren't paranoid, we were prescient. "The boys don't know," I said. It wasn't a question. "They suspect something isn't right," Mr. Harold replied. "They've been calling my office for weeks trying to push the reading forward. But no, they don't know the specifics." I thought about that. About my sons sitting in the other room, confident in their victory, already mentally spending money that would never be theirs. About all the times they had dismissed me, overlooked me, treated me like a burden to be managed rather than a mother to be honored. "Would you like me to inform them?" Mr. Harold asked. I considered the offer. It would be so easy to let him handle it, to stay in this cedar-scented office while someone else delivered the news, to avoid their faces, their reactions, their inevitable anger. But no, I had spent too long avoiding difficult moments, too long letting others speak for me, act for me, decide for me. "No," I said, "let them hear it during the reading, with everyone else." Mr. Harold studied me for a long moment, then closed the file. "You'll stay for the reading." "Yes," I said, "now that I've been allowed to sit." When I returned to the conference room, something had shifted. I could feel it in the air, see it in the way Randall and Trevor held themselves. They were no longer lounging in their chairs like kings surveying their kingdom. They were sitting up straight alert like animals who had caught a scent they couldn't identify but knew meant danger. Neither of them looked at me as I took my seat. But I saw their postures change, saw the glances they exchanged when they thought I wasn't watching. They knew something had happened. They just didn't know what. Good. Let them wonder. Let them spend these last few minutes in uncertainty, the same uncertainty they had forced me to live with for years. Mr. Harold entered behind me and took his place at the head of the table. He opened a folder, arranged some papers, and cleared his throat. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "We're here today for the reading of the last will and testament of Marlene Grace Whitlow." I closed my eyes for just a moment, letting my sister's name wash over me, Marlene Grace. Our mother had chosen that middle name because she said Marlene came into the world like Grace itself, easy and beautiful. She wasn't wrong. "Before we proceed," Mr. Harold continued, "I need to address a matter of some importance." Randall sat forward. "What matter?" Mr. Harold ignored him, keeping his eyes on the document in front of him. "It has come to my attention that there are multiple versions of Mrs. Whitlow's will in existence. The version submitted by Randall and Trevor Delacroix last fall, and an earlier version filed in 2008. "The 2008 version is outdated," Randall said immediately. "Aunt Marlene updated her wishes. She told us specifically that she wanted us to handle everything." "I'm sure she did," Mr. Harold said, and there was something in his voice that made Randall stop talking. "However, the 2008 will was executed as a mutual will jointly signed by Mrs. Whitlow and her sister May Delacroix. Under state law, a mutual will can only be revoked with the written consent of both parties. No such revocation exists." The silence that followed was deafening. I watched Randall's face transform as the meaning of those words sank in. First confusion, then disbelief, then something darker. Something that looked almost like hatred. "That's not possible," he said. "Aunt Marlene was ill. She wasn't in her right mind when she signed that document. It should be invalidated." Mr. Harold reached into his folder and pulled out a stack of papers. "I have here Mrs. Whitlow's medical records from 2008 confirming she was of sound mind at the time of signing. I also have journal entries in her own handwriting written over several years confirming her wishes remained unchanged. Would you like me to read them aloud?" Randall's jaw clenched so tight I thought he might crack a tooth. "Furthermore, Mr. Harold continued, the 2008 will was witnessed by 2 independent parties and notarized by a county official. It is in every legal sense unimpeachable." Trevor finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "So what does this mean?" Mr. Harold set down his papers and looked directly at me. "It means that May Delacroix is the sole beneficiary of Marlene Whitlow's estate. The house, the land, all financial accounts, everything." The words fell into the room like stones into still water, sending ripples in every direction. I heard gasps from the distant relatives, saw the color drain from Randall's face, watched Trevor close his eyes like a man receiving a death sentence. And I felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction, just a bone-deep weariness that came from finally setting down a burden I had carried for far too long. Randall stood so fast his chair scraped against the floor. "This is fraud. She manipulated Aunt Marlene when she was sick. She took advantage of a vulnerable woman." "Sit down," Mr. Harold said, and his voice carried the weight of decades of authority. "Your accusations are not only baseless, they are dangerously close to defamation. I suggest you consult with your own attorney before saying anything else." Randall's hands were shaking. With rage, probably. He had always had a temper, even as a child. Derek used to say we needed to watch that boy, that there was something hard growing inside him. I hadn't wanted to believe it. I believed it now. "This isn't over," Randall said, looking directly at me for the first time since the reading began. "You think you've won, but this isn't over." I met his gaze steadily. "I never thought of it as winning, Randall. I thought of it as honoring my sister's wishes, Something you would understand if you had visited her more than twice in 3 years. He flinched, just slightly, but I saw it. Trevor stood and touched his brother's arm. "Let's go," he muttered. "Let's just go." For a moment, I thought Randall might refuse, might cause the scene he had earlier accused me of wanting to make. But something in Trevor's voice must have reached him because he grabbed his briefcase and stormed out of the room without another word. Trevor lingered for just a moment. He looked at me, and in his eyes I saw something that might have been shame. "Mom, Go," I said quietly. "We'll talk later." He nodded and followed his brother out. The room slowly emptied after that. Distant relatives offered awkward condolences, clearly unsure what to make of the drama they had witnessed. The cousin I had nodded to earlier stopped by my chair and squeezed my shoulder, saying nothing. Sometimes nothing was exactly the right thing to say. Finally, it was just me and Mr. Harold. "That was quite a performance," he said, and there was definite amusement in his voice now. "It wasn't a performance. I simply let them see what they had created." He nodded thoughtfully. "Your sister chose well when she chose you." I thought about Marlene, about her red ribbons and too many opinions, and the way she could make anyone laugh even on the worst days. About how she had looked at me near the end when she couldn't remember my name, but somehow still remembered that I was safe. "She chose me a long time ago," I said. "We chose each other." The drive home felt longer than usual. The streets looked the same, the houses unchanged, but everything felt different, like I was seeing the world through new eyes, or maybe just finally seeing it clearly for the first time. When I pulled into my driveway, the house seemed to watch me, an old colonial that Derek and I had bought 40 years ago, back when the neighborhood was just starting to grow. We had painted it blue because I loved blue. He had built a bench on the front porch because I loved sitting outside in the evenings. Every room held memories, some painful, most precious. I didn't go inside right away. Instead, I sat in the car with the engine off, letting the silence wrap around me. My sons had tried to erase me today, had stood in front of a chair and told me I wasn't family, had plotted and schemed to take an inheritance they hadn't earned from a woman they hadn't bothered to know. And I had let them believe for years that I was just their foolish old mother, too kind to see their manipulation, too soft to fight back. They had underestimated me. Marlene never had. I remembered the night we wrote those wills. It was late fall leaves burning red and gold outside her window. We had finished the wine and moved on to coffee, and she had grown serious in that sudden way she had. "People change when money's involved," she had said, stirring cream into her cup with more focus than the task required. "I've seen it happen. Good people turn ugly. Family turns into strangers." My boys would never. I had protested, still believing it back then. Marlene had looked at me with those sharp eyes, the ones that saw everything and forgave very little. Maybe not, but let's not give them the chance to prove us wrong. So we wrote the wills, named each other sole beneficiaries, made it ironclad, unbreakable safe from anyone who might try to interfere. I had forgotten about it mostly, stored it in my fireproof box along with my marriage certificate and Derek's death certificate and the baby teeth I had kept from when the boys were small. Just another document in a life full of documents. But Marlene never forgot. Even when her mind began to slip, even when she couldn't remember what she had eaten for breakfast, somehow she held on to this promise, this protection. I finally went inside, kicked off my shoes, and stood in my kitchen as the light through the windows shifted from afternoon gold to evening gray. The house was quiet in that way I had grown accustomed to since Derek died. Not lonely quiet, not exactly. More like waiting quiet, like the house itself was holding its breath, wondering what would happen next. I boiled water for tea I wouldn't drink, put the kettle on because that's what I always did. Some habits don't break just because your world has shifted on its axis. The answering machine light was blinking. I ignored it. There would be time for phone calls later. Time for accusations and arguments and all the ugliness that was surely coming. But not tonight. Tonight I sat at the kitchen table where I had fed my children 1,000 meals, where I had helped with homework and celebrated birthdays, and cried quietly after Derek's funeral while the boys divided up his belongings like vultures picking at a carcass. I should have seen it then. the way they had catalogued his things with more interest than grief, the way they had asked about the will before his body was cold. But I was different then, softer, more willing to explain away bad behavior because the alternative was too painful to accept. Marlene had seen it, though. She had watched them at the funeral, watched them in the weeks that followed, and one evening she had taken my hand and said, "You need to protect yourself, baby sister. Those boys love you, but they love themselves more." I had been angry at her for saying it, had defended them, made excuses, insisted she was wrong. She wasn't wrong. She was never wrong about people. The memory made me ache in a place I couldn't quite locate. Somewhere between my heart and my spine, a grief that had nothing to do with death and everything to do with loss. I had lost my sons long before today. The will reading just made it official. Outside the dogwood tree Marlene had planted in 1995 rustled in the evening breeze. She had chosen that tree because she said it reminded her of something delicate but defiant. Those pale pink blossoms that looked so fragile, but somehow survived frost and wind and time. I understood now why she had chosen it. The phone rang sharp and sudden in the quiet house. I let it go to voicemail. "Mom!" Randall's voice tight with barely controlled fury. "We need to talk about what happened today. There's clearly been some kind of mistake. Call me back." The machine beeped, then rang again. "Hey, Mom." Trevor this time softer, but no less urgent. "Look, I don't know what's going on, but Randall's really upset. Maybe we could all sit down and figure this out like a family." Like a family. I almost laughed. When had we stopped being a family? When had these boys I raised become strangers who only called when they needed something? When had I become nothing more than a signature on a check, a free babysitter, a backup plan? Maybe it was when Derek died and they fought over his car before his grave marker was even finished. Maybe it was when Randall convinced me to sign over the deed to this house for tax purposes, and I barely got it back before he tried to refinance it in his name. Maybe it was when Trevor stopped saying thank you for the loans that were never repaid, the emergencies that never ended, the endless taking that had no bottom. Or maybe it was slower than that. Maybe it happened gradually over years and decades, so slowly that I didn't notice, until suddenly I was standing outside a conference room being told I wasn't family. The phone rang a third time. I unplugged it. Tomorrow I would deal with the fallout. Tomorrow I would call Mr. Harold and begin the process of transferring assets. Tomorrow I would face whatever legal challenges Randall inevitably threw at me. But tonight I was going to sit in my quiet house and remember my sister. Remember the girl with red ribbons who taught me how to lie convincingly. The woman who traveled the world and brought back strange gifts. The aunt who twirled my boys around and let them stay up past bedtime and filled this house with laughter that had faded so long ago I had almost forgotten its sound. I pulled out Marlene's photo album, thick leather, worn soft at the edges from decades of handling. I hadn't opened it since her funeral, couldn't bear to see her face frozen in happier times. But tonight, I needed to remember, needed to see her strong and vibrant and alive. There she was in Greece in 1978, standing in front of the Parthenon with a scarf tied around her hair. In Canada in 1985, laughing at something just outside the frame. In Japan in 1992, looking completely at peace in a garden surrounded by cherry blossoms. She had lived so fully, had squeezed every drop of joy from her years, even when those years became complicated, even when her mind began to betray her. I found a photo I had forgotten about. Marlene and me, young, maybe early 20s, sitting on the porch of our parents' house. We were holding hands, and our expressions were serious in a way that seemed strange until I remembered. This was taken right after the accident, right after we became orphans. We had clung to each other in those dark days, had learned to navigate the adult world together because there was no one else to show us the way. We had made mistakes. God knows we had made mistakes. But we had survived. And now she was gone and I was still here, still surviving. Still learning that sometimes the people who hurt you most aren't strangers, but the ones you trusted to have your back. The night deepened around me. I didn't turn on any lights, letting the darkness settle into the corners of the room like an old friend come to visit. I thought about Derek, wondered what he would say if he could see what our boys had become. He had always been better at tough love than me, better at setting boundaries and sticking to them. Maybe if he had lived, things would have been different. Maybe he would have seen the warning signs earlier and done something about it. Or maybe not. Maybe some paths are set long before we realize we're walking them. Maybe Randall and Trevor were always going to become the men they became, regardless of what Derek or I or anyone else did. It was a painful thought, but there was a strange comfort in it too. If I couldn't have prevented this, then I didn't need to blame myself for not preventing it. I could simply accept it and move forward. Moving forward. Such a simple phrase for such a complicated process. I knew the coming weeks would be difficult. Randall would not accept defeat easily. He would hire lawyers, file motions, make accusations. He would try to drag Marlene's name through the mud, paint her as incompetent, suggest that I had manipulated her. Let him try. I had documentation going back nearly 2 decades. I had her journal entries, her medical records, her own words written in her own hand long before the disease took hold. I had the truth. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I had something else too. I had my voice. No more smiling through slights, no more explaining away cruelty, no more pretending that blood automatically meant loyalty, that family couldn't become enemy, that love was always enough. Some people don't deserve your silence. Some situations demand that you speak up, stand firm, refuse to be erased. Marlene had known that, had tried to teach me that in her way. It only took me 67 years to learn. The clock struck midnight as I finally closed the photo album. My eyes were dry. The time for tears had passed, replaced by something harder and more useful, determination. Tomorrow I would begin the next chapter of my life, the chapter where May DeLoqua was no longer the quiet woman who gave and gave and gave, the chapter where she protected herself first and apologized for it. Never. But that was tomorrow. Tonight, I sat in the darkness with my memories and my grief and my hard-won wisdom, and I let myself feel everything. The loss of my sister, the betrayal of my sons, the death of the woman I used to be, and somewhere beneath all that pain, something else, something that felt almost like peace. I had done what Marlene asked. I had honored her wishes. I had protected our bond from those who would have dismantled it for profit. Whatever came next, that couldn't be taken from me. The shadows lengthened, the house settled into its nighttime sounds, and somewhere in the dark, I could almost hear my sister's voice laughing at the absurdity of it all, proud of me for finally fighting back. "Took you long enough, baby sister?" I imagined her saying. "I know," I whispered to the empty room, "but I got there in the end." And that would have to be enough. The morning sun was cruel in its brightness. I hadn't slept much, just drifted in and out of a restless haze filled with fragments of dreams and memories that tangled together until I couldn't tell which was which. But I was awake now, and the day was waiting. I showered, dressed in clothes that felt like armor. Simple, practical, nothing flashy. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I was preparing for battle. The first call came at 8:15. Randall again, his voice controlled this time, carefully professional. "Mother, I think we need to sit down with our attorneys and discuss this situation. There may have been some procedural errors that need addressing." I didn't call him back. The second call came at 9, Trevor sounding like he hadn't slept either. "Mom, please. Randall's talking about lawsuits and contesting the will, and I don't want this to get ugly. Can't we just talk?" I didn't call him back either. Instead, I called Mr. Harold. "I want to move quickly," I told him. "Transfer everything into my name, set up protections so they can't touch any of it." "That can certainly be arranged," he said. "Are you anticipating a legal challenge?" "I'm anticipating everything." He was quiet for a moment, and I could picture him in his cedar-scented office nodding to himself. "Come in this afternoon. We'll drop the paperwork." After I hung up, I made myself eat breakfast. Toast and eggs, nothing special, but I needed fuel. The coming days would require strength I wasn't sure I had, but I would find it. I had been finding it for years, digging deep when there seemed to be nothing left. That's what women like me learned to do. We bent, but didn't break. We weathered storms that would have shattered weaker souls. I looked out the window at Marlene's dogwood tree, its blossoms catching the morning light. delicate but defiant. She had chosen well, and so finally had I. 3 days passed before Randall made his move. May had just finished her morning tea when she heard the car pull into the driveway. Not the familiar rumble of Trevor's old pickup, but the smooth purr of something expensive. Something that announced itself before the driver even stepped out. She didn't rush to the door. Let him come to her. Let him knock and wait like anyone else who wanted entry into her home. The doorbell rang once, then twice, then a fist against the wood, impatient and demanding. May set down her cup, smoothed her blouse, and walked to the door with the measured pace of a woman who had nowhere else to be. Randall stood on the porch, but he wasn't alone. A man in a charcoal suit stood beside him, briefcase in hand, face arranged in professional neutrality. A lawyer, of course. "Mother," Randall said, and the word sounded like an accusation. "We need to talk." "You brought reinforcements," May observed, looking at the lawyer without extending her hand. "I didn't realize a conversation with your mother required legal counsel." The lawyer stepped forward. "Mrs. Delacqua, my name is Vincent Cross. I represent your son in matters concerning the Whitlow estate. May we come in?" "No." The single word hung in the air. Randall's jaw tightened. "Mom, don't be difficult. We're trying to resolve this like adults." "Adults don't ambush people at 9 in the morning with lawyers," May said evenly. "If you have something to say it here. Or better yet, have your attorney send it in writing to Mr. Harold." Vincent Cross cleared his throat. "Mrs. Delacqua, my client believes there may have been irregularities in the execution of the 2008 will. We're prepared to pursue legal remedies if necessary, but we'd prefer to reach an amicable settlement." "Settlement," May repeated. "You mean you want me to give your client money he isn't entitled to?" "We want to ensure fairness," Cross said smoothly. "Mrs. Whitlow's later wishes clearly indicated she wanted your sons to inherit. The 2008 document may not reflect her true intentions at the time of her death." May felt something cold settle in her chest. Not fear, recognition. This was the play. Paint Marlene as confused her final wishes as the real ones, the mutual will, as an outdated mistake. "My sister's true intentions," May said slowly, "were made clear to me over decades of conversations, letters, and her own journal entries. She knew exactly what she wanted, and she wanted to make sure certain people never got their hands on what she'd built." Randall's composure cracked. "This is ridiculous. You're talking about us like we're criminals. We're her nephews. We're family." "Family visits," May said. "Family calls. Family shows up for more than funerals and will readings. When was the last time you saw your aunt alive? Randall actually saw her, sat with her, held her hand." He didn't answer. 2 years, May continued. 2 years before she died. You came for Thanksgiving, stayed 45 minutes, and left before dessert because you had a closing to get to." "I was busy. I have a career." "You have excuses. There's a difference." Vincent Cross intervened before Randall could respond. "Mrs. Delacqua, emotional arguments won't hold up in court. We're prepared to file a formal contest of the will on grounds of undue influence and diminished capacity. It would be in everyone's best interest to avoid a lengthy legal battle." May looked at this man, this stranger her son had hired to intimidate her, and felt the last threads of patience snap. "File whatever you want," she said. "I have 17 years of documentation. I have medical records confirming my sister's mental state when we signed that will. I have her own words written in her own hand explaining exactly why she made the choices she made." She paused, letting the weight of her next words settle. "And I have a no-contest clause in my own will. If either of my sons challenges Marlene's estate, they will be completely disinherited from mine. Every penny, every property, every family heirloom will go to charity." Randall's face went pale. "You wouldn't?" "Try me." The silence stretched between them, filled with years of disappointment and broken trust. May watched her son struggle with something she recognized. The realization that his mother was no longer the soft, pliable woman he had always known, that somewhere along the way she had grown teeth. "This isn't over," Randall finally said, his voice low and hard. "Yes, it is. You just don't know it yet." She closed the door in their faces and stood with her back against it, heart-pounding hands steady. Outside she heard voices, then car doors, then the sound of an engine fading into the distance. May walked to the kitchen and poured herself another cup of tea. Her hands were shaking now, the adrenaline finally catching up. But underneath the trembling she felt something else. Pride. She had done it. She had faced her son and his hired gun and refused to bend. For the first time in longer than she could remember, she had chosen herself. The phone rang. May looked at the caller ID. Trevor. She hesitated, then answered. "Hello." "Mom." His voice was different than Randall's, softer, more uncertain. "I heard what happened. Randall called me on his way back. He's furious." "I imagine he is." "Mom, I'm not calling to fight. He trailed off, and May could hear him breathing on the other end. "I want you to know I'm not part of this. Whatever Randall's planning, I'm not involved." May sat down at the kitchen table. "Then why are you calling?" "Because you're my mother. Because I hate that this is happening. Because I don't want to lose you over money I never even asked for." Something in his voice made May pause. Trevor had always been the softer of the two, the one who felt things deeply, even when he tried to hide it. She remembered him as a little boy crying when Derek accidentally stepped on a snail in the garden, insisting they have a funeral for it. That boy was still in there somewhere, buried under years of following his brother's lead, but still present. "What do you want, Trevor?" "I want to make things right. I know I've let you down. I know I haven't been the son I should have been, but I'm not Randall, Mom. I don't want your money. I never did." May closed her eyes. She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe that at least one of her children hadn't become a complete stranger. "Then prove it," she said. "Stay out of this lawsuit. Don't let Randall drag you into his schemes, and maybe, just maybe, we can find our way back to something that looks like family." "I can do that," Trevor said quickly. "I will do that. I promise." "Don't promise, just do." She hung up before he could respond. Promises meant nothing. Actions were everything. If Trevor truly wanted to repair what was broken between them, he would have to show her, not tell her. The week that followed was quiet in the way that comes before a storm. May went about her days with deliberate calm, tending her garden, visiting Mr. Harold to finalize paperwork, trying to remember what normal felt like. But normal was a memory now, something that belonged to the woman she used to be. On Wednesday, a letter arrived. Heavy white envelope, gold trim, the seal of a downtown law firm embossed on the corner. May knew what it was before she opened it. The formal notice of contest. Randall had filed. She read through the legal language with steady eyes. Allegations of undue influence, claims of diminished capacity, a request to freeze all asset transfers until a judge could review the will. Her son was suing her. Actually, suing her. The boy she had nursed through chickenpox and held during nightmares and cheered at every little league game was now dragging her into court. May set the letter down and walked to the phone. "Harold," she said when he answered, "I assume you received your copy." "I did. It's standard posturing, May. Nothing in there has any legal merit." "I know, but I want to be ready. Whatever he throws at us, I want to be prepared to throw it right back. I've already drafted our response. We'll file tomorrow." "Good." May paused, thinking. "I want to add something that will make clear exactly what kind of person Randall is dealing with." "What did you have in mind?" May told him. When she finished, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Are you sure about this?" Harold asked finally. "I've never been more sure of anything." She hung up and went to the closet where she kept her fireproof box. Inside, along with the will and the medical records and all the other documentation, was something else. A letter Marlene had written 3 years before she died, when her mind was still sharp and clear. May had never read it to anyone, had kept it private, sacred, a final message from her sister meant for her eyes only. But some messages were too important to keep secret. Some truths needed to be spoken out loud, even if the person who wrote them was no longer alive to speak them. May pulled out the letter and began to read. "My dearest May," it began. If you're reading this, I'm probably gone, and knowing our family, someone is probably making trouble. So let me be clear for the record for posterity, for any judge or lawyer or greedy nephew who thinks they know better than me what I wanted. The words were pure Marlene, sharp, funny, unflinching. I chose May as my heir because she earned it, not with money or gifts or flattery, but with presence. She was there when no one else was. She held my hand when I forgot how to hold my own. She never once made me feel like a burden, even when I know I must have been one. May's vision blurred, but she kept reading. To anyone who tries to take what I've given her, let me say this. You didn't want me when I was alive. You don't deserve me now that I'm dead. May is my family. The rest of you are just people I used to know. She set the letter down, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Tomorrow, this letter would be entered into evidence. Tomorrow, Marlene's voice would speak from beyond the grave, and everyone would hear exactly what she thought of those who had abandoned her. It was the least May could do, and it was exactly what Marlene would have wanted. Thursday morning, May woke to the sound of her doorbell. She checked the clock, 6:45, too early for anything good. She pulled on her robe and made her way downstairs, expecting Randall or another lawyer or some new crisis she hadn't anticipated. Instead, she found Trevor. He stood on the porch in his work clothes, oil stains on his jeans, hair uncombed. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "I told him no," Trevor said before May could speak. "Randall wanted me to testify against you. Said if I backed his story about Aunt Marlene being incompetent, we'd split everything 50-50. May's heart clenched. And I said no. I told him I wasn't going to lie about a woman I barely knew just to steal from my own mother. May searched his face for deception, for hidden motives, for the familiar signs of manipulation she had learned to recognize. She found nothing but exhaustion and something that looked almost like shame. "He threatened me," Trevor continued. "Said if I didn't help him, he'd make sure I never saw a cent of anything. Not from the estate, not from you, not from anywhere. Said I'd regret it." "What did you say?" Trevor met her eyes. "I said some things weren't worth any amount of money. I said I'd already lost enough by being a terrible son, and I wasn't going to lose what was left of my soul." May stood in the doorway, feeling something shift inside her. Not forgiveness, not yet. Forgiveness had to be earned over time, proven through actions demonstrated again and again, until trust was rebuilt. But this was a beginning, a first step in a very long journey. "Come inside," she said finally. "I'll make coffee." They sat at the kitchen table, the same table where May had spent so many hours with Marlene, and Trevor told her everything. About Randall's plans, his strategies, the lawyers he had hired, and the witnesses he was trying to bribe. About the alternate will that had been fabricated last fall, using forged signatures and backdated documents. "I didn't know about the forgery until last week," Trevor said, his voice heavy with guilt. "I knew they were pushing Aunt Marlene to change her will, knew they were visiting her behind your back when you went to the grocery store, but I didn't know they actually faked documents." May felt cold. "They visited her while I was out." Trevor nodded miserably. "Randall said it was just to keep her company, but I think he was trying to get her to sign things. She was confused enough by then that she might have signed anything." "She didn't sign anything," May said firmly. "I would have known. I kept track of everything." "I know. That's why they had to forge it." The magnitude of what she was hearing settled over May like a weight. Her sons hadn't just tried to steal an inheritance. They had committed fraud, actual criminal fraud that could send them to prison. And Trevor was sitting here confessing, knowing that this information could destroy his brother. "Why are you telling me this?" May asked. Trevor looked down at his hands. "Because I'm tired of being the person I became. I'm tired of following Randall into things I know are wrong. I'm tired of pretending I don't see what's happening just because it's easier than standing up." He looked up and his eyes were wet. "I want to be the son you thought you raised, even if it's too late, even if you can never forgive me. I want to at least try." May reached across the table and took his hand. It was rough and calloused, a working man's hand so different from Randall's manicured smoothness. "It's not too late," she said quietly, "but it will take time, and it will take more than words." "I know." Trevor squeezed her hand. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes." The next few days were a blur of activity. May met with Mr. Harold and shared everything Trevor had told her. The forged documents, the secret visits, the systematic attempt to manipulate a dying woman. Harold's face grew grimmer with each revelation. "This changes everything," he said when she finished. "If we can prove forgery, this isn't just a civil matter anymore. This is criminal." "I don't want Randall in prison," May said, surprising herself. "He's still my son." "That may not be your choice to make," Harold replied gently. "But we can focus on the civil case for now. The criminal aspects can be addressed later, if at all." They prepared their counterattack. Trevor agreed to provide a sworn statement detailing everything he knew. Medical records were gathered, journal entries, copied Marlene's letter prepared for entry into evidence. And then, on Monday morning, May received a phone call that changed everything. It was Randall's lawyer, Vincent Cross. "Mrs. Delacroix," he said, his smooth voice now carrying an edge of desperation. "My client would like to discuss a settlement." May almost laughed. "A settlement? How interesting. Last week he was threatening to destroy me in court. Circumstances have changed. Mr. Delacroix is prepared to withdraw his contest in exchange for a modest settlement, say 30% of the estate's liquid assets." 30%. May let the words hang in the air. "Your client commits fraud, tries to steal from his own mother, and now he wants 30% as a reward. Mrs. Delacroix, I strongly advise you to consider this offer. A court battle will be costly and emotionally devastating for everyone involved." May smiled, though Cross couldn't see it. "Tell your client that my counteroffer is 0, not 1 cent, and tell him that if he doesn't withdraw his contest by Friday, I will personally deliver every piece of evidence I have to the district attorney's office." Silence on the other end. "Mrs. Delacroix, that would be a very serious escalation." "I'm aware. The choice is his." She hung up and stood by the window watching the dogwood tree sway in the morning breeze. Delicate, but defiant. Just like Marlene had been. Just like May was learning to be. By Friday, the contest was withdrawn. No apology came, no acknowledgement of wrongdoing, just a terse legal document stating that Randall Delacroix was discontinuing his challenge to the Whitlow estate. May held the document in her hands and felt nothing. Not triumph, not relief, not even satisfaction. Just a bone-deep weariness and the beginning of something that might eventually become peace. The phone rang. Claire, her cousin's granddaughter, the one person who had stood by her through everything. "I heard," Claire said. "Trevor called me. It's over. It's over." "Oh, Aunt May, I'm so glad. I was so worried about you." May smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. "Don't be worried, sweetheart. I'm tougher than I look." "I know you are. You're the toughest person I know." They talked for a while about nothing important. The weather. Claire's job at the library, a new recipe they both wanted to try. Normal things, good things. The kind of conversation May had missed more than she realized. After she hung up, May went to her closet and pulled out the fireproof box one last time. Inside, along with all the documents that had saved her, was an envelope she had prepared weeks ago. A letter for Claire explaining everything. Explaining why May had chosen her as the primary beneficiary of her own will. Not because Claire had asked for anything, but because she had given everything. May sealed the envelope and placed it back in the box. One day, Claire would read it. One day she would understand what her presence had meant to an old woman who had lost so much. But that day was not today. Today, May Delacroix was going to sit on her porch, drink her tea, and watch the dogwood blossoms fall like pale pink snow. Today she was going to remember her sister, honor her memory, and be grateful for the gift Marlene had given her. The gift of knowing her own worth. The gift of finally speaking up. The gift of learning at 67 years old that it was never too late to become who you were meant to be. 2 weeks after the contest was withdrawn, May received a visitor she never expected. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and she had just finished lunch when the doorbell rang. She opened it to find a woman she didn't recognize standing on her porch. Mid-30s, dark hair pulled back tight, expensive clothes that didn't quite fit right on her thin frame. "Mrs. Delacroix?" the woman asked. "Yes. Can I help you?" The woman's lips pressed together, and May noticed her hands were trembling. "My name is Jennifer Delacroix. I'm Randall's wife." May stood frozen. In all the years of conflict, all the phone calls and visits and holiday gatherings that had grown increasingly rare, she had never met this woman. Randall had mentioned getting married 4 years ago, had sent a brief email with a single photo attached. May had sent a card and a check. Neither had been acknowledged. And now, here she was. The daughter-in-law May had never known. "May I come in?" Jennifer asked, and her voice cracked on the last word. May stepped aside without answering. Some things didn't need words. They sat in the living room, Jennifer perched on the edge of the sofa, like she might bolt at any moment. May studied her, trying to read the story written in the lines around her eyes, the way she kept twisting her wedding ring, the bruise barely visible beneath the makeup on her left cheekbone. "I don't know where to start," Jennifer said finally. "Start anywhere. I've got time." Jennifer took a shaky breath. "Randall doesn't know I'm here. He thinks I'm at the spa. If he finds out—" She trailed off, and her hand moved unconsciously to her cheek. May felt something cold settle in her stomach. "Jennifer, did he do that to you?" The younger woman's eyes filled with tears. "It's not usually this bad. He's under a lot of stress. The lawsuit, the estate, everything that happened. He's not himself." "That's not an answer." Jennifer looked down at her hands. "Yes, he did." May had known disappointment in her sons, had felt betrayal, anger, grief. But this was something different. This was shame so deep it reached into her bones and settled there like lead. Her son hid his wife, her boy, the one she had raised to respect women, to be gentle, to use his words instead of his fists. Somewhere along the way, he had become a monster. "How long?" May asked quietly. 3 years. Since the business started going bad. He took out loans he couldn't repay, made investments that fell through. When the money got tight, so did his temper. "Why are you telling me this?" Jennifer looked up and her eyes were red, but her voice was steady. "Because I'm leaving him, tonight. And I need you to know something before I go." May waited. The forged will, the fake documents. It wasn't just Randall's idea. Jennifer swallowed hard. "He had help. Someone inside Mr. Harold's office. Someone who's been feeding him information about you, about the estate, about everything." May's blood went cold. "Who?" "A paralegal named Karen Mendez. She's been working with Randall for almost a year, copying documents, passing along private information. She's the one who helped create the fake will." Karen Mendez, Kay Mendez. The young woman at the will reading, the one who had looked nervous and uncomfortable, the one who had taken May's document to Mr. Harold. She had been the enemy all along. "Why are you telling me this?" May asked again. Jennifer stood pulling her coat tight around her shoulders. "Because someone should know the truth. Because I'm tired of covering for him. And because you were kind to me once, even though you didn't know me." "When was I kind to you?" "The wedding check. You wrote a note with it. You said you hoped I would be happy, that you were sorry you couldn't be there, that you wished us all the love in the world." Jennifer's voice broke. "No one in Randall's family had ever wished me anything. You didn't even know me, and you wished me happiness." May remembered that note, had written it quickly, trying to express something real in just a few sentences. She hadn't known if anyone would read it. "I have to go," Jennifer said, moving toward the door. "My sister's waiting for me, but please, Mrs. Delacroix, be careful. Randall isn't done. He's desperate now, and desperate people do desperate things." She was gone before May could respond, leaving nothing but the faint smell of perfume and the echo of revelations that changed everything. May called Mr. Harold immediately. "Karen Mendez," she said without preamble. "How long has she worked for you?" There was a pause. About 2 years. Why? She's been feeding information to Randall. She helped forge the documents. I have it from a reliable source. The silence that followed was thunderous. May, that's a very serious accusation. I'm aware, but I believe it's true, and I think you need to look into it immediately. I will. I'll call you back within the hour. The hour stretched into 2, then 3. May paced her kitchen, unable to sit still, unable to think about anything except the betrayal that seemed to multiply with each passing day. When the phone finally rang, she grabbed it on the first ring. You were right, Harold said, and his voice was heavy. Karen confessed within 20 minutes. She's been working with Randall since before Marlene died, passing him documents, copying files, even altering records in our system. How is that possible? Don't you have security? We do, but she was careful, and she had access we didn't realize she was abusing. Harold paused. There's more, May. Worse. Tell me. Karen claims Randall promised her a cut of the estate if she helped him, 10% of whatever he inherited. But when the contest was withdrawn, he refused to pay her. That's why she confessed so quickly. She's furious at being cheated. May almost laughed at the irony. Randall's own greed had undone him. His refusal to pay his accomplice had exposed the entire scheme. What happens now? She asked. Karen is being turned over to the police. The evidence she provided implicates Randall directly in the forgery. He'll likely face criminal charges. May closed her eyes. Her son, a criminal, going to prison. Is there any way to stop it? She heard herself ask. Do you want to stop it? Did she? Part of her wanted to protect him, the same part that had always protected him, that had made excuses and smoothed over problems and given second chances that were never deserved. But another part, the part that had grown stronger over these past weeks, knew better. Knew that protecting Randall now would only enable more damage, more lies, more victims like Jennifer. No, May said finally. I don't want to stop it. Let justice take its course. Are you sure? I'm sure. She hung up and sat in the growing darkness of her kitchen, feeling the weight of what she had just done. She had chosen truth over family, had chosen consequences over comfort, had chosen to stop being the woman who smoothed things over. It was the hardest choice she had ever made, and it was the right one. The arrest happened 3 days later. May watched the news coverage from her living room volume, low hands wrapped around a cup of tea that had long gone cold. There was Randall being led from his office in handcuffs, his face twisted with rage and disbelief. There were the reporters shouting questions he refused to answer. There was his lawyer, Vincent Cross, looking like a man who wished he had chosen a different client. The charges were serious. Forgery, fraud, conspiracy, elder abuse for the attempts to manipulate Marlene. Each one carried potential prison time. May's phone had been ringing all day, neighbors wanting to gossip, distant relatives demanding explanations, reporters looking for quotes. She answered none of them. The only call she took was from Trevor. Mom. His voice was raw. I just saw. Are you okay? I don't know what okay means anymore. I'm coming over. You don't have to. I know. I'm coming anyway. He arrived within the hour, still in his work clothes, face pale and drawn. May let him in without speaking, and they sat together in the living room where she had sat with Jennifer just days before. I didn't know, Trevor said. About Jennifer, about the abuse. I swear I didn't know. Would it have changed anything if you did? He was quiet for a long moment. I want to say yes. I want to believe I would have done something. But honestly, I don't know. I spent so many years ignoring things I didn't want to see. At least you're honest about it. Trevor looked at her, and his eyes were wet. Mom, I'm so sorry. For everything. For the money I borrowed and never paid back. For the times I let you down. For standing next to Randall at that will, reading like you were the enemy instead of our mother. May felt something shift inside her. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the beginning of something, a crack in the wall she had built around her heart. Sorry is a start, she said quietly, but it's not an end. I know. I'm going to make it right. however long it takes." They sat in silence as the evening deepened around them. Outside, the dogwood tree rustled in a breeze May couldn't feel. Somewhere in the city, her eldest son was being processed into the county jail. "I saw Jennifer," May said suddenly. "Before all this, she came to see me." Trevor's head snapped up. "She did?" "She told me everything, about Randall, about what he was really like." May paused. "She told me he hit her." Trevor's face went gray. "God, I had no idea." "She's safe now. Left him that same night. She's the one who gave me the information about Karen Mendez." "She saved you?" "No." May shook her head slowly. "She saved herself, and in doing so, she helped me. There's a difference." Trevor reached for her hand, and May let him take it. His palm was rough against hers, calloused from years of work. Real work. Honest work. He had never been like Randall, had never had the same hunger for money and status and control. He had just been weak, had followed where his brother led because it was easier than standing alone. But he was standing alone now, had chosen to stand alone when it mattered most. "What happens next?" Trevor asked. "I don't know. The lawyers will handle the criminal case. The estate will transfer to me officially within the month. After that..." May trailed off, thinking about the plans she had made, the documents she had signed, the future she was building. "After that, I start living for myself, for the first time in a very long time." A week later, May met Claire for lunch at a small cafe downtown. It was their usual spot, quiet and unpretentious, the kind of place where they could talk for hours without being rushed. Claire was already there when May arrived, her face lighting up with that warm smile that always made May think of Marlene. "You look different," Claire said as May sat down. "Different how? Lighter, like you've set something down." May considered that. "I suppose I have." They ordered and over salads. Neither of them really ate. May told Claire everything. The arrest, the revelations about Karen Mendez, the visit from Jennifer. Claire listened without interrupting her expression, shifting from shock to anger to something that looked like fierce pride. "You did the right thing," Claire said when May finished, "even though it was hard. Some days it doesn't feel right. Some days it just feels like loss. That's how the right thing often feels. Heavy and sad and necessary all at once." May reached across the table and squeezed Claire's hand. "I want you to know something. I've changed my will. Not recently, I did it weeks ago, but I want you to know about it now." Claire's eyes widened. "Aunt May, you don't have to tell me anything about your will." "I want to. I want you to understand why I made the choices I made." May took a deep breath. "You're my primary beneficiary. After Marlene's estate is settled and all the legal matters are handled, everything I have will go to you." Claire's face went pale. "That's not possible. Your sons..." "My sons made their choices. Now I'm making mine." May smiled gently. "You've never asked me for anything, Claire. In all the years I've known you, you've only ever given. Your time, your attention, your care. You remind me of who I was before I learned to shrink myself to fit other people's expectations." "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll accept it. Say you'll use it to build a life that makes you happy." Claire's eyes were streaming now, tears running down her cheeks unchecked. "I'll try. I'll do my best. That's all any of us can do." They finished their lunch talking about lighter things, carefully stepping around the weight of what had just been shared. When they parted, Claire hugged May so tight it almost hurt. "Thank you," Claire whispered, "for seeing me, for really seeing me." May held her close, thinking of all the people who had never seen her, who had looked right through her like she was furniture useful but unimportant. She had spent too many years being invisible. Never again. The trial began 6 months later. May attended every day, sitting in the back row of the courtroom, watching justice unfold with the same steady gaze she had turned on Randall in her kitchen all those months ago. The prosecution presented its case methodically. Documents, witness testimony, Karen Mendez on the stand in exchange for a reduced sentence. The evidence was overwhelming. Randall's defense tried everything, claimed he was misled by Karen, claimed the stress of his aunt's death had affected his judgment, claimed he had only been trying to protect the family. None of it worked. On the 5th day of the trial, something unexpected happened. Jennifer took the stand. May hadn't known she would be called, hadn't known Jennifer was even still in contact with the prosecution. But there she was, composed and clear-eyed, her bruises healed, her voice steady as stone. "Did your husband ever discuss his plans for the Whitlow estate with you?" the prosecutor asked. "Yes, many times." "What did he say?" Jennifer looked directly at Randall for the first time. "He said his mother didn't deserve any of it. Said she was just a burden who had gotten lucky by being Marlene's caretaker. He said once he got control of the money, he would put her in a nursing home and sell her house." The courtroom went silent. May felt the words hit her like physical blows. A burden. Lucky. Nursing home. All those years of sacrifice. All those years of putting her sons first, of giving until she had nothing left. And this was how Randall had thought of her, as an obstacle to be disposed of. Jennifer continued. He also said he would make sure his brother Trevor never saw a cent unless he cooperated. He used people's loyalty as leverage. It was how he operated. The prosecutor nodded. "And what happened when you tried to object to these plans?" Jennifer's hand moved to her cheek, the ghost of old injuries haunting her features. He made it clear that objecting wasn't an option. Randall's lawyer objected, tried to redirect, but the damage was done. The jury had seen the truth, had seen who Randall really was beneath the charming exterior. The verdict came 3 days later, guilty on all counts. Randall was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for the first 4. As the bailiffs led him away, he turned and looked at May for the first time since the trial began. "Are you happy now?" he spat. "You destroyed your own son." May stood slowly, feeling every one of her 67 years, and also feeling stronger than she had ever felt in her life. "No, Randall," she said clearly enough for the whole courtroom to hear. "You destroyed yourself. I just stopped cleaning up the mess." She walked out without looking back. Trevor was waiting outside the courthouse. He had come every day, had sat beside May through every testimony and every revelation, had not spoken to his brother once. "It's over," he said as they walked to May's car. "The legal part is over. The rest—" May shook her head. "The rest will take longer." "I know." Trevor stopped walking and turned to face her. "Mom, I've been thinking about everything that happened, about the kind of person I was and the kind of person I want to be. And I want to pay you back everything I ever borrowed. I know it'll take years. I know I'll have to sacrifice things I thought were important, but I want to do it. I need to do it." May looked at her son, really looked at him. He was 42 years old with gray at his temples and lines around his eyes. He looked tired and sad and determined all at once. "Keep your money," she said. "Use it to build a life you can be proud of. That's payment enough." "But Mom—" "I mean it, Trevor. I don't need your money. I never did. What I needed was respect. What I needed was to know my children saw me as a person, not just a resource." She paused. "You're starting to see me now. That's worth more than anything you could ever repay." Trevor's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry it took so long." "So am I. But we're here now. That's what matters." They drove home in comfortable silence, the kind that exists between people who have weathered a storm together and come out changed on the other side. That night, May sat on her porch with a cup of tea, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. The dogwood tree Marlene had planted swayed gently, its branches bare now in the late autumn chill, but still standing still, reaching upward. She thought about everything she had lost. A son to his own greed. Years of her life to obligations that were never truly hers. The woman she might have been if she had found her voice sooner. But she also thought about what she had gained. Self-respect, boundaries, a relationship with Trevor that was being rebuilt slowly, honestly, brick by brick. Claire's love freely given and gratefully received, and most importantly, herself. For 67 years, May Delacroix had been someone's mother, someone's wife, someone's sister, someone's caretaker. She had defined herself by her relationships to others, had measured her worth by how much she gave. No more. Now she was simply May, a woman who had finally learned that setting down a burden wasn't the same as abandoning it, that saying no wasn't selfish, that protecting yourself didn't mean hurting others. She finished her tea and went inside, leaving the porch light on for no one in particular. Just because she wanted to. Just because she could. And in the quiet of her own home, surrounded by memories both painful and precious, May Delacroix smiled. 8 months after the trial ended, May received a letter from the federal prison in Danbury. She recognized the handwriting immediately. That sharp, slanted script she had watched develop from wobbly kindergarten letters to the confident strokes of a man who believed the world owed him everything. Randall's handwriting, Randall's words reaching out from behind bars. May held the envelope for a long time without opening it. Part of her wanted to throw it away unread. Part of her wanted to burn it. But another part, the part that would always be his mother, no matter what he had done, needed to know what he had to say. She opened it slowly, carefully, as if the paper itself might wound her. "Mother," it began. No dear, no warmth, just the word flat and accusatory. "I've had time to think in here, time to understand what you did to me. You chose strangers over your own blood. You let them put me in a cage like an animal. I hope you're proud of yourself." May's hands trembled, but she kept reading. "Trevor tells me you've been spending time with Claire, that girl who isn't even really family. He says you're planning to leave her everything that should have gone to us, to your real sons, the children you raised." The bitterness seeped through every word like poison. "I want you to know that I will never forgive you. When I get out of here, and I will get out, don't expect me to come crawling back. You made your choice. Now live with it." The letter was signed simply, Randall. No love. No son, just his name, sharp as a knife. May set the letter down and stared at it for a long moment. She had expected anger, had expected blame, but the totality of his refusal to accept any responsibility, even now, even after everything, still managed to shock her. He had learned nothing, suffered nothing he was willing to acknowledge. 7 years in prison, and he still believed himself the victim. She picked up the letter and walked to the fireplace, struck a match, held the flame to the corner of the paper and watched it curl and blacken and turn to ash. Some words didn't deserve to be kept. Trevor came by that afternoon, as he had every Sunday for the past several months. It had become their routine, a small ritual of rebuilding. He would bring lunch, usually sandwiches from the deli she liked. They would eat together, talk about nothing important, slowly learning to be comfortable in each other's presence again. Today, though, something was different. Trevor's face was drawn, his movements jerky. He set the sandwiches on the counter and turned to face her. "I got a letter from Randall, too," he said. May nodded slowly. "What did his say? That I'm a traitor, that I chose you over him, that when he gets out, I shouldn't expect to have a brother anymore." Trevor's voice cracked. "He said Dad would be ashamed of me." May felt a surge of anger so hot it took her breath away. Derek. Her Derek. The man who had spent his entire life teaching his sons to be honest, to be kind, to take responsibility for their actions. The idea that he would have sided with Randall, would have supported the lies and the fraud and the violence, was obscene. "Your father would have been proud of you," May said firmly. "You stood up for what was right. You chose integrity over easy money. That's exactly what he tried to teach you. Then why does it feel so awful? Because doing the right thing often does. That doesn't make it wrong." Trevor sat down heavily at the kitchen table, the same table where so many of these difficult conversations had taken place. "I keep thinking about when we were kids, before everything got complicated. Remember how Randall used to make up these elaborate games? He'd be the king, I'd be the knight, and we'd spend hours building forts in the backyard." "I remember." "When did he stop being that kid? When did he become—" Trevor trailed off, unable to finish. "I don't know," May said honestly. Maybe he was always this way and we just didn't want to see it. Or maybe something changed along the way, something we missed. Either way, it doesn't matter now. What matters is who he chose to become, and who you're choosing to be. Trevor looked up at her, and his eyes were red. I'm trying, Mom. I'm really trying. I know you are, and I see it. Every time you show up here, every time you call, every time you choose honesty over convenience, I see it. They ate their sandwiches in a silence that was more companionable than awkward. When Trevor left, he hugged her at the door, a real hug, not the perfunctory gesture it used to be. Same time next week, he asked. I'll be here. She watched him drive away and felt something she hadn't expected. Hope. Small and fragile, but real. 3 weeks later, May got a phone call that changed everything again. It was Jennifer, Randall's ex-wife. They had spoken a few times since the trial brief conversations that always felt like they were dancing around something neither of them was ready to name. Mrs. Delacqua, Jennifer said, and her voice was strange, tight. I need to tell you something, in person. Can I come over? Of course. When? Now. I'm already in my car. 20 minutes later, Jennifer was sitting in May's living room clutching a cup of tea she wasn't drinking. She looked different than she had at the trial, healthier, more solid. But right now her face was pale and her hands wouldn't stop shaking. What is it? May asked gently. Jennifer set down the tea. I'm pregnant. The words hung in the air like smoke. The baby is Randall's, Jennifer continued. I found out 2 weeks ago. I thought about not telling anyone, about just handling it on my own. But then I realized that's not fair. Not to you, not to the baby, not even to me. May's mind raced through the implications. A grandchild, Randall's child, a baby who would be born while its father was in prison for fraud and forgery. What are you going to do? May asked. I'm keeping it. I know that might seem crazy given everything, but this baby didn't do anything wrong. It doesn't deserve to be punished for its father's choices. No, it doesn't. Jennifer finally met May's eyes. I don't want anything from you. I'm not here asking for money or help or a place to stay. I just thought you should know. This baby will be your grandchild, whether any of us planned it that way or not. May sat with that for a moment. A grandchild. She had given up on the idea of grandchildren years ago, had watched other women her age become grandmothers, while her own sons seemed incapable of maintaining relationships long enough to start families. And now, in the strangest possible circumstances, she was going to be a grandmother. Does Randall know? She asked. I haven't told him. I'm not sure I want to. He has no rights anymore, not after everything he did. And I don't want him thinking this baby gives him some claim on my life. That's your decision to make. But Jennifer, whatever you decide, I want you to know something. May reached across and took the younger woman's hand. You're not alone. Not if you don't want to be. Jennifer's composure finally cracked. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Why are you being so kind to me? I was married to the man who tried to destroy you. You were a victim too, maybe the biggest victim of all. And besides, May squeezed her hand. You're carrying my grandchild. That makes you family. Real family. Not the kind that's based on obligation or blood, but the kind that's based on choice. Jennifer stayed for 2 hours. They talked about the pregnancy, about Jennifer's plans, about the life she was building away from Randall's shadow. She had a new job, a small apartment, friends who actually treated her like a person instead of a possession. When she finally left, May walked her to the door. Thank you, Jennifer said, for listening, for not judging, for being nothing like your son. Thank you for giving me a chance to be a grandmother. It's a gift I never expected. After Jennifer was gone, May sat in her quiet house and tried to process what had just happened. A baby, a new life, a chance to do things differently. She thought about Marlene, who had never had children, who had poured her love into May and May's sons instead, who had ended up betrayed by the nephews she had adored. This baby would be different. May would make sure of it. She picked up the phone and called Claire. I have news, she said when Claire answered. Big news, Can you come over tomorrow?" "Of course. What is it?" "I'd rather tell you in person. But it's good news, I think. At least I hope it will be." Claire was there first thing the next morning, as May knew she would be. That was Claire. Reliable, present, always showing up when it mattered. May told her everything. Jennifer's visit, the pregnancy, her decision to be involved if Jennifer would have her. Claire's reaction surprised her. "Are you sure about this?" Claire asked carefully. "I mean, this baby is Randall's. Are you ready to have that connection to him for the rest of your life?" "The baby isn't Randall. The baby is its own person, and I won't punish an innocent child for its father's sins." "I know. Claire hesitated. "I worry about you. You've been through so much. I don't want to see you get hurt again." May smiled, touched by Claire's protective instinct. Getting hurt is part of being alive. But closing yourself off, refusing to love, because it might not work out, that's not living at all. I spent too many years protecting myself from disappointment. I'm done with that. Claire nodded slowly. "Then I'm happy for you. And I'm here, whatever you need. I know you are. You always have been." The months that followed were a strange mix of anticipation and healing. May found herself drawn into Jennifer's pregnancy in ways she hadn't expected. Doctor's appointments, baby showers, long conversations about names and nursery colors, and the 1,000 small decisions that go into preparing for a new life. Trevor was skeptical at first. "You're really going to do this?" he asked one evening when May showed him the tiny outfit she had bought. "You're really going to be a grandmother to Randall's kid?" "I'm already a grandmother. The question is what kind of grandmother I'm going to be. And what kind is that? The kind who shows up, the kind who loves without conditions, the kind I wish I had been to you and your brother before everything went wrong." Trevor was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "What if I wanted to be part of it too? The baby, I mean, being an uncle." May felt her heart swell. "I think the baby would be lucky to have you, even though I'm not exactly a role model. You're trying to be better. That's all any of us can do." And the baby came in April, 3 weeks early, but healthy and screaming with life. A girl, 7 pounds, 2 ounces, with a shock of dark hair and her mother's eyes. Jennifer named her Grace. Grace Eleanor Whitlow, using her own maiden name instead of Randall's. A fresh start for a new life. May held her granddaughter for the first time in the hospital, this tiny, perfect person who had no idea of the complicated history she had been born into. Grace didn't know about wills or forgery or prison sentences. She only knew warmth and hunger and the faces of the people who loved her. "She's beautiful," May whispered. "She is," Jennifer agreed, exhausted but radiant. "And she's lucky. She has you." May looked up, surprised. "She has you. You're her mother." "Yes, but she also has a grandmother who knows what real love looks like. That's not nothing." In the weeks that followed, May found a new rhythm to her life. Mornings with tea and the newspaper. Afternoons visiting Jennifer and Grace, helping with feedings and diaper changes, and all the small tasks that come with a newborn. Evenings with Claire or Trevor, maintaining the relationships she had worked so hard to build. She was busier than she had been in years. Busier than she had been since Derek died, since the boys grew up and moved away, since her life had shrunk to the dimensions of her quiet house. And she was happy. Genuinely, deeply happy, in a way she had almost forgotten was possible. It was on one of these busy days, 3 months after Grace's birth, that the phone rang with news May had been dreading. It was a prison official calling to inform her that Randall had been attacked by another inmate. He was in the hospital. Critical condition. They didn't know if he would survive. May sat down slowly, the phone still pressed to her ear. "Mrs. Delacroix, are you still there?" "Yes, I'm here." "As his emergency contact, we wanted to inform you immediately. You're welcome to visit if you'd like." Emergency contact, she had never changed it, had never even thought about it. And now her son, her firstborn, was lying in a hospital bed, fighting for his life. "I'll come," she heard herself say. I'll be there as soon as I can." The drive to the prison hospital took 3 hours. 3 hours of thinking about Randall. Not the man he had become, but the boy he had been. The child who used to climb into her lap and beg for stories. The teenager who had cried when his first girlfriend broke up with him. The young man who had held her hand at Derek's funeral and promised to take care of everything. She had failed him somewhere. She didn't know where or how, but somewhere along the way, something had gone wrong. Maybe it was nature, maybe it was nurture, maybe it was just the random cruelty of fate. But her son had become a monster, and now that monster was dying. When she arrived, a guard escorted her to the hospital wing. Randall was in a private room, handcuffed to the bed, even in his unconscious state. His face was swollen, bruised, almost beyond recognition. Machines beeped and hummed around him. May pulled up a chair and sat down. She didn't touch him, didn't speak, just sat and watched and waited. An hour passed, then 2. Nurses came and went, checking vitals, adjusting medications. None of them spoke to her beyond what was necessary. Finally, near midnight, Randall's eyes opened. He saw her immediately. And in that moment, despite everything, despite all the anger and betrayal and bitter words, she saw something in his eyes she hadn't seen in years. Fear. "Mom," he whispered, his voice cracked and weak. "You came. I came. Why?" May thought about all the answers she could give. "Because you're my son. Because I couldn't stay away. Because some bonds can't be broken even when they should be." Instead, she said simply, "Because someone should be here." Randall closed his eyes, and for a moment she thought he had slipped back into unconsciousness. But then he spoke again so quietly she had to lean forward to hear. "I'm sorry." 2 words. 2 words she had waited months, years, maybe her whole life to hear from him. And now here they were in a prison hospital at midnight, with machines beeping out the rhythm of his damaged body. "For what?" she asked. "For everything. For the will. For the lies. For what I said to you. For who I became." His eyes opened again, and they were wet. For being the worst son a mother could have. May felt tears sliding down her own cheeks. "Why now? Why are you saying this now?" "Because I thought I was going to die. And I realized I didn't want to die with you hating me. I didn't want my last thought to be about money or revenge or any of the things I wasted my life on." "What did you want your last thought to be?" Randall was quiet for a long moment. "I wanted to remember what it felt like when you used to hold me, when I was little, when I thought you could fix anything." May's heart broke. Not shattered, not destroyed, just broke clean and painful and necessary. She reached out and took his hand, the first time she had touched him in years. "I can't fix this," she said. "I can't make it right, but I can be here, if you'll let me." Randall's fingers tightened around hers, weak, but there. "I'm tired, Mom. I'm so tired of being angry." "Then stop. It's a choice, Randall. Everything is a choice." He didn't respond. His eyes drifted closed again, his grip loosening as sleep or something deeper pulled him under. May stayed until dawn. Stayed even after the doctors came and told her he would likely survive, that the injuries were serious but not fatal. Stayed because leaving felt like abandonment, and she had done enough of that. When the sun finally rose, she kissed her son's forehead and walked out of the prison hospital. She didn't know if his apology was real, didn't know if this near-death experience would change him or if he would revert to the bitter, angry man she had visited. But she knew one thing. She had been there. She had held his hand. She had done what a mother does even when the child doesn't deserve it. That would have to be enough. On the drive home, May called Trevor. "Randall was attacked," she said. "He's in the hospital. He's going to survive, but it was close." Silence on the other end. Then, "Are you okay?" "I don't know. Ask me again tomorrow." "Do you want me to come over?" "Yes, please." Trevor was waiting in her driveway when she arrived. He didn't ask questions, didn't demand explanations, just took her hand and walked her inside and made her tea while she sat at the kitchen table too exhausted to move. "He apologized," May said finally. While he was lying there, he said he was sorry. Trevor set the tea in front of her. Do you believe him? I don't know, but I think I want to. Is that foolish? I think it's human. May wrapped her hands around the warm cup. He's still my son Trevor, despite everything. I can't stop loving him just because he hurt me. That's not how it works. I know. Trevor sat down across from her. I've been thinking a lot about that. About what it means to love someone who doesn't deserve it. About whether that makes you weak or strong. What did you decide? I decided it's neither. It's just love. It doesn't follow rules or make sense. It just is. May smiled tiredly. When did you get so wise? I had a good teacher. She just took me a while to listen. They sat together as the morning light filled the kitchen, not talking, just being. Two people who had been through something terrible and come out the other side, not unchanged, never unchanged, but together. And that May realized was its own kind of miracle. 6 months passed before Randall was released from the prison hospital and returned to his cell. May received updates from the warden's office, brief and clinical, telling her nothing about her son's state of mind. She didn't visit again. That one night had been enough, had been more than she thought she could bear. But she thought about him. Every day she thought about him. The apology haunted her, not because she doubted it, but because she didn't know what to do with it. Forgiveness wasn't something you could schedule like a doctor's appointment. It came when it came, if it came at all. Meanwhile, life continued. Grace was growing, hitting milestones with the determination of a child who didn't know she was supposed to be weighed down by her family's history. Her first smile, her first laugh. The first time she reached for May's face with those tiny, perfect fingers. She knows you, Jennifer said one afternoon, watching May hold the baby. She always calms down when you're here. She knows I'm safe. Babies can feel that. It's more than that. You're her grandmother. She feels the connection. May looked down at Grace's face, so peaceful in sleep, and felt something loosen in her chest. This child was proof that good things could come from broken places, that love could bloom in scorched earth. Trevor had become a regular presence too. Every Sunday lunch, every Wednesday evening phone call, every holiday that used to pass in lonely silence. He was rebuilding himself brick by brick, and May watched with a mixture of pride and caution. I'm thinking about going back to school, he told her one Sunday. Getting my business degree, maybe starting something of my own. What kind of something? I don't know yet. Something that helps people instead of just making money. May smiled. Your father would like that. You think so? I know so. He always said the best business was one that left the world a little better than you found it. Trevor was quiet for a moment. I wish I had listened to him more, when he was alive. We all wish that about the people we've lost. The trick is listening to the ones who are still here. Claire's role in May's life had solidified into something neither of them had expected. She wasn't just a beneficiary or a surrogate daughter. She was a partner, a confidant, a friend in the truest sense of the word. They had dinner together every Friday. Sometimes just the two of them, sometimes with Jennifer and Grace, sometimes with Trevor. A chosen family assembled from the wreckage of the old one. I've been thinking about the estate, May said one Friday evening after the dishes were cleared and they were sitting with cups of decaf. About what happens after I'm gone. Claire's face tightened. I don't like talking about that. I know, but it's important. I want you to understand my intentions. You've already told me. I'm your beneficiary. I don't need to know the details. Yes, you do, because the details matter. May set down her cup. I'm leaving the house to you, and a trust fund for Grace's education, and a smaller fund for Trevor, enough to help him start his business, but not enough to let him coast. What about Randall? The question hung in the air. May had been asking herself the same thing for months. I don't know yet. I thought I did. After the trial, after the conviction, I was sure I would leave him nothing. But now, she trailed off. Now what? Now I'm not sure that's the right thing. He's my son. Whatever he's done, he's still my son. Claire reached across the table and took May's hand. You don't have to decide tonight, or tomorrow, or even next year. You have time. Do I? At my age, time is the one thing I'm not sure of. Then use the time you have wisely. Make the decision when you're ready, not when you feel pressured. May squeezed Claire's hand, grateful beyond words for this woman who had come into her life so quietly and become so essential. The call came on a Thursday morning 3 weeks later. May was in the garden pulling weeds when the phone rang. She almost didn't answer, but something made her straighten up, brush the dirt from her hands, and walk inside. "Mrs. Delacqua, this is Warden Collins at Danbury Federal." May's heart stuttered. "Is Randall all right?" "He's fine, ma'am. That's not why I'm calling." A pause. "Your son has requested to speak with you, officially through our family reconciliation program. He's been working with our counselor, and he's asked to have a supervised conversation with you, if you're willing." May sat down slowly. A supervised conversation. A formal request. This wasn't a deathbed apology or a moment of crisis. This was Randall in his right mind asking to talk. "What does that involve?" "You would come to the facility. We'd set up a meeting room with a counselor present. Your son has prepared some things he wants to say. You would have the opportunity to respond or not, as you choose. And this is something he initiated." "Yes, ma'am. He's been working toward this for several months. The counselor says he's made significant progress." May closed her eyes. Several months. That meant he had started this process long before the attack, had been working toward reconciliation even when she thought he was still full of nothing but bitterness. "I need to think about it," she said. "Of course, take all the time you need." She hung up and sat in the silence of her kitchen, the same kitchen where so many impossible conversations had taken place. The clock ticked, the refrigerator hummed. The world continued indifferent to the weight of what she was considering. Could she do this? Could she sit across from the son who had tried to destroy her and listen to whatever he had to say? She called Trevor. "He wants to talk," she said without preamble, "through some kind of prison program, a formal reconciliation meeting." Silence on the other end. Then, "What are you going to do?" "I don't know. That's why I'm calling you." "Mom, I can't tell you what to do. This is between you and Randall." "I know, but I want your opinion." Trevor was quiet for a long moment. "I think you should go. Not for him, for you, so you can close this chapter one way or another." "What if it makes things worse? What could be worse than where you are now, wondering, waiting, never knowing if he's really changed or if it was all just prison talk?" He was right. The uncertainty was its own kind of torture. At least a meeting would give her answers, even if those answers were painful. "Will you come with me?" she asked. "If you want me to." "I do." "Then I'll be there." The drive to Danbury took 3 hours just like before, but this time May wasn't alone. Trevor sat beside her, solid and steady, not filling the silence with empty chatter, but not leaving her to drown in her thoughts either. They arrived at the facility and went through the security procedures, the searches and checkpoints that May remembered from her first visit. But this time, instead of a hospital ward, they were led to a small conference room with a table, 4 chairs, and a woman in a gray suit who introduced herself as Dr. Patterson. "Mrs. Delacqua, thank you for coming. I know this wasn't an easy decision." "No, it wasn't. Before we bring Randall in, I want to prepare you for what to expect. He's going to read a statement he's prepared. Then you'll have the opportunity to respond. There's no pressure to say anything you don't want to say. This is about giving both of you a chance to be heard." May knotted her throat too tight for words. "Are you ready?" "Yes." Dr. Patterson opened the door and signaled to someone in the hallway. A moment later, Randall walked in. He looked different. Older, thinner, with gray at his temples that hadn't been there a year ago. The arrogance that had always defined him was gone, replaced by something May couldn't quite identify. Humility, maybe? Or exhaustion? Or both? He sat down across from her, and for a long moment nobody spoke. Then Randall opened a folder and pulled out a sheet of paper. His hands were shaking. "Mom," he began, his voice rough. "I wrote this down because I knew I wouldn't be able to say it otherwise. So please, just let me get through it." May nodded. Randall took a breath and began to read. "I have spent the last 18 months thinking about what I did. Not just the fraud and the forgery, but all of it. The years of taking you for granted. The times I treated you like an obstacle instead of a mother. The way I convinced myself that I deserved things I hadn't earned." He paused, struggling to maintain his composure. "I blamed you. For a long time I blamed you for everything. For favoring Marlene over me. For loving Trevor more than me. For turning your back on me when I needed you most. But Dr. Patterson helped me see that I was wrong. You didn't turn your back on me. I pushed you away. I pushed everyone away who wouldn't give me what I wanted." Tears were streaming down his face now, but he kept reading. "I think about Aunt Marlene, about how I treated her when she was dying. I never visited, never called, never even sent a card. And then I had the nerve to claim her money like I had earned it, like I deserved something for simply existing." His voice cracked. "I'm so ashamed, Mom. I'm so ashamed of who I became." He set down the paper and looked at her directly for the first time. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve that. I'm not asking for a relationship or money or anything else. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. I understand what I did. And I'm sorry. I'm sorrier than I've ever been for anything in my entire life." The silence that followed was absolute. May looked at her son, really looked at him, and saw something she hadn't seen in decades. The boy he used to be. The child who had cried when his father died. The teenager who had promised to take care of everything and then lost his way. "Randall," she said quietly, "I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't know if I'll ever be able to fully trust you again. But I want you to know that I heard you, every word, and I believe you mean it." He let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for years. "I also want you to know," May continued, "that I never stopped loving you, even when I hated what you were doing, even when I thought I had lost you forever. The love didn't go away. It just got buried under everything else." Randall's face crumpled. "How can you still love me after what I did?" "Because you're my son, because I remember who you were before all of this, because I have to believe that person is still in there somewhere, even if it takes years to find him again." Dr. Patterson leaned forward. "Randall, is there anything you'd like to say in response?" He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "I want to be better. I want to come out of here and be the son you deserved. I know I have 4 more years, but I'm going to use them. I'm going to work on myself, really work, not just serve time, but change." May reached across the table and took his hand. The same hand she had held in the hospital. The same hand that used to grip hers when he was small and scared of the dark. "Then do it," she said. "Prove it. Not to me, not to Trevor, not to anyone else. Prove it to yourself." "I will. I swear I will." The meeting lasted another hour. They talked about Grace, about Jennifer, about all the things Randall had missed while locked away. He cried when he heard about his daughter, cried harder when May showed him a photograph on her phone. "She's beautiful," he whispered. "She looks like Mom. I mean like you. She has your eyes. She has her mother's eyes. But she has your stubbornness. Jennifer says she screams until she gets what she wants." A ghost of a smile crossed Randall's face. "That's definitely a Delacroix trait." When it was time to go, May hugged her son for the first time in years. He felt different in her arms, smaller somehow, reduced by circumstances and choices to something more human, more fragile. "I'll come back," she said. "Once a month if you want." I want that so much." "Then I'll be here." The drive home was quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet. Not tense or painful, but thoughtful. Processing. "That was hard to watch," Trevor finally said. "It was hard to do. But you did it. You showed up for him even after everything." May stared at the road ahead. "He's my son. Showing up is what mothers do, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts." "Do you think he's really changed?" "I think he's trying to change. Whether he succeeds?" She shrugged. "That's up to him. All I can do is give him the chance." Trevor was quiet for a moment. "I'm proud of you, Mom. I don't say that enough, but I am." "I'm proud of you too. You've come so far this year." "We both have." They drove the rest of the way in companionable silence, watching the sun set over the highway, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. A year passed, then 2, then 3. May turned 70, and Claire threw her a party. Nothing extravagant, just the people who mattered most. Trevor and his new girlfriend, a kind woman named Sarah, who worked at the library with Claire. Jennifer and Grace, now a chattering 3-year-old who called May Grandma May and demanded stories every time she visited. And Claire herself, the backbone of this strange, beautiful family they had built from ruins. Randall called from prison that night. The calls had become regular now, weekly check-ins that May had come to look forward to despite herself. "Happy birthday, Mom," he said. "I wish I could be there. 1 more year, then you can be. I know, I'm counting the days. Are you still working with Dr. Patterson?" "Every week. She says I'm making progress, real progress, not just going through the motions." "I believe you." And the strange thing was, she did. Not completely, not without reservations, but enough. Enough to keep showing up, enough to keep the door open. Grace grabbed the phone from May's hand. "Uncle Randall." She had started calling him that 6 months ago after Jennifer decided it was time for her to know who her father was. Not the details, not the crimes, just the fact that he existed and that he loved her even though he couldn't be with her. "Hey, Princess," Randall said, his voice softening in a way May had never heard before. "Are you being good for Grandma May?" "I'm always good. I got a new dress for the party. It's purple." "Purple is the best color." May watched Grace chat with her father, watched the easy affection between them that was building despite bars and distance and history. Children were resilient. They loved without calculation, without keeping score. Maybe that was the lesson. Maybe that was what all of this had been teaching her. Love without keeping score. The night ended with cake and candles and a wish that May kept to herself. She blew out the flames and looked around at the faces surrounding her. Trevor, who had become the man his father always knew he could be. Claire, who had taught her what family could mean when it was chosen instead of obligated. Jennifer, who had survived a monster and emerged stronger than ever. Grace, who represented everything good that could come from everything bad. And Randall present, even in his absence, working toward a future none of them could have imagined 3 years ago. "What did you wish for?" Grace asked. "If I tell you, it won't come true." "But I want to know." May laughed and pulled the little girl into her lap. "I wished for exactly what I have. Nothing more, nothing less." It wasn't a lie. For the first time in her life, May DeLoqua wanted exactly what was in front of her. Not more money, not more recognition, not the validation of sons who had once dismissed her. Just this. This imperfect, beautiful, hard-won peace. Randall was released on a Tuesday morning in April, 4 years after his conviction. May and Trevor were waiting outside the gates. Jennifer had decided not to come, had said it was too soon, that she needed more time before she could face him. May understood. When Randall walked out, he looked like a different person. Not just older or thinner, but fundamentally changed. The arrogance that had defined him for so long was gone, replaced by something quieter, more careful. He stopped when he saw them. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Trevor stepped forward. "Welcome back, brother." Randall's face crumpled. He grabbed Trevor in a hug that lasted long enough to say everything words couldn't. When they finally separated, Randall turned to May. "Mom, I don't know how to thank you for the visits, for the calls, for not giving up on me. Don't thank me. Just be the man you promised to be." "I will. I swear I will." They drove to May's house where she had prepared the guest room for him. He would stay with her until he got on his feet, found a job, rebuilt some semblance of a life. It wasn't going to be easy. Ex-convicts faced obstacles at every turn. But he had family now. Real family, not the kind based on obligation or blood alone, but the kind forged in fire. That evening, Claire came over for dinner. She was nervous, May could tell. She had never met Randall, had only heard the stories, had every reason to be wary. But Randall surprised everyone. "You're Claire," he said when she walked in. "Mom talks about you all the time. Thank you for taking care of her when I couldn't, when I wouldn't." Claire studied him for a long moment. "Your mother is easy to love." "I know. I just forgot for a while." They ate dinner together, the four of them in the kitchen where so much had happened. The conversation was careful, at first stilted, but slowly, gradually, it loosened. Trevor made a joke. Claire laughed. Randall smiled, really smiled for the first time in years, and May watched it, all her heart fuller than she had ever imagined it could be. After dinner, when Claire and Trevor had gone and Randall was settling into his room, May sat on the porch with a cup of tea. The dogwood tree Marlene had planted was blooming again, pale pink blossoms catching the last light of day. Randall came out and sat beside her. "I miss this," he said quietly, "sitting with you, watching the sunset. We can do it every night if you want." "I'd like that." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sky turn from gold to purple to deep blue. "Mom," Randall said eventually, "I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "In prison, I had a lot of time to think about Dad, about what he would have thought of me, of what I became." He paused. "I think he would have been ashamed. Maybe. But I also think he would have been proud of you, for standing up to me, for not letting me get away with it, for being stronger than anyone ever gave you credit for." May felt tears prick her eyes. "Your father always believed in doing the right thing even when it was hard." "I know, and you did the right thing, Mom. Even though I hated you for it at the time, you did what needed to be done." May reached over and took her son's hand, scarred now from the attack, from the years of hard labor, but warm, alive. "We all did what we had to do. The question now is what we do next." "What do you want to do next?" May looked out at the dogwood tree, at the blossoms that fell like pale pink snow at the garden Marlene had loved, and May had tended through all the years of joy and sorrow. "I want to live," she said, "really live. Whatever time I have left, I want to spend it with the people who matter, doing things that bring joy, letting go of everything else." "That sounds good." "It sounds like something Marlene would have said." Randall smiled. "Then she was a wise woman." "She was the wisest person I ever knew." So, they sat together until the stars came out, mother and son broken and healing, finally at peace. A year later, May revised her will for the final time. She left the house to Claire. The trust fund for Grace remained intact. Trevor's business fund was increased after he proved himself worthy of it. Jennifer received a sum to help her and Grace start fresh, and Randall. Randall received something that surprised everyone: the photo albums. Every picture, every memory, every moment of the family they had been before everything fell apart. Not money, not property, just proof that there had been good times once, that love had existed before betrayal poisoned it. "Why?" he asked when she told him. "Because money can't buy what you really need. What you need is to remember who you were, who we were, before." He held the albums like they were made of glass. "Thank you, Mom. This means more than you know." "I know exactly what it means. That's why I chose it." May Delocqua died peacefully in her sleep 3 years later at the age of 74. She went surrounded by the family she had chosen and the son she had reclaimed. Her last words spoken to Claire as she held her hand were simple: "Thank you for seeing me." At the funeral, Claire spoke first, then Trevor, then Jennifer holding Grace's hand, and finally Randall, who stood before the gathered mourners with tears streaming down his face. "My mother taught me that love isn't about what you're given, it's about what you give." She gave everything, to her sister, to her sons, to strangers who became family, even when we didn't deserve it, especially when we didn't deserve it. He paused, looking at her photograph. "I spent most of my life trying to take from her. Money, attention, forgiveness I hadn't earned, and she spent most of her life giving it anyway. Not because she was weak, because she was stronger than any of us understood." He took a shaky breath. "Mom, wherever you are, I hope you know, I finally get it. I finally understand what you were trying to teach me all along, and I promise I will spend the rest of my life proving that your faith in me wasn't wasted." The service ended with Marlene's favorite song, the one May used to hum while she worked in the garden. The dogwood tree stood witness, its blossoms falling gently on the gathered mourners like a final blessing. And in the quiet that followed, something shifted. The anger that had divided this family for so long finally released its grip. The wounds that had seemed unhealable began at last to close. May Delocqua had been right. You don't need to be loud to be powerful. You don't need to fight to win. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is simply refuse to be erased. She had stood her ground. She had spoken her truth. She had loved without conditions and forgiven without forgetting. And in the end, that was enough. That was everything.